Hey, yo, it's me. It's RVE, formerly the R-A-V, formerly Raven Effect. What's up, everyone? It's the RVE here for the HeelCast, doing some of my favorite shows where we do the nostalgia shows where we go back, take a look at TNA wrestling in the year 2008. We've already done 2006 and 2007. With me on both of those episodes for the Hurls cast, the man kicking it and making it the Hurls cast. Hurls, what's up, buddy?
Oh, not much. Really excited to talk about 2008. It's going to be fun to look at a lot of this stuff that I may have forgotten about. I think as an overview of 2008 before we start, I remember it kind of being a rather quiet year in terms of TNA, but it's going to be fun nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing these shows too because honestly, you know, like I've said, 2006 to 2009 was my favorite period with this company. 2009 was my favorite year, but you know, this was the time that I really think Impact overtook. I'm sorry, at the time, TNA overtook WWE and was a superior product for a long time. This is actually when I was still a fan of the WWE, but so and plus Christian Cage was around, all that. So we're gonna get into everything from 2008. You know, on the other shows we've had Wrestling Robert with us. We don't have Robert this time around because Robert was actually fighting for our country and deployed out and was not around to see Impact a lot of 2008. So what we've done is we got the Mike Tenay podcast and wrestling history and information, all that. We got our buddy Larkin. What's up, Larkin?
I'm doing well, guys. Look forward to talking some TNA 2008 year that included Christian Cage, the front line, the main event Mafia, and a lot of good stuff. Look forward to talking about it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you on here. You know, for any maybe possible first-time HeelCast listener or whatever that hasn't checked out Larkin, you do the S&M Podcast. Larkin, where can everyone find you and your other stuff you do?
Sure. You could check me out on SoundCloud, MC Larkin92, and everything is on the new website. It's just type in www.stephenmikeshow.com, and my main Twitter is @SMShow1, all right there for accessibility, and y'all can check me out.
Yeah, definitely check out Larkin. Larkin does a lot of stuff, not just pro wrestling related, but he talks a lot of stuff, music, you know, music reviews, music history. You know, he's had Killer Cross on multiple times. He's had me on there talking about Marilyn Manson. I mean, he can get better than that. Can't get bigger star power than the RVE, but check Larkin out. All sorts of wrestling, so check it out for sure. All right, guys, so let's start it off. January 2008. Our first pay-per-view, which is it's still weird to me to look back and see this, was Final Resolution of that year, which, you know, was normally a December pay-per-view as the years went on. But we started off Final Resolution of 2008. Some highlights. We had Gail Kim retaining her Knockouts Championship against Awesome Kong in a no DQ match. So, you know, one of the best, if not the best rivalries in the history of the Knockout division, the one that kind of really put it on the map. Kicked things off there. Booker T was in TNA at the time. His wife, Charmel, who didn't do a whole lot of wrestling, she actually debuted wrestling in TNA. They defeated Robert Roode at the time and Tracy Brooks. We had Team 3D and Johnny Devine defeat the Motor City Machine Guns and Jay Lethal in an Ultimate X match. AJ Styles and Tom Co defeating Kevin Nash and Samoa Joe. Main event had our world champion Kurt Angle retaining against the great Christian Cage. I don't really have a lot to say on this. It was, you know, the roster at the time was just all-star stacked. Larkin, anything you want to chime in here before we hit to Against All Odds in February?
I have to say, I was really a fan of like Team 30 and the X Division because they cut some funny segments with, you know, trying to, you know, stay at the weight and make weight for these matches. As far as Booker T and Charmel, man, I even hated it when, you know, they were going against the Boogeyman in 2006 at WrestleMania 22. But watching them around this time, I remember the feud with Robert Roode. I think Booker T coming in, it was fine. You know, it was solid. As far as AJ and Tom go against Nash and Joe, that's when Nash and Joe, you know, they were having their problems. You know, this was right after the Scott Hall no-show at Turning Point. Gail Kim and Awesome Kong, like you rightfully stated, Raven, some of the great matches that those ladies had, and this one being one in that. And then Kurt Angle, Christian Cage. I mean, these are guys, I remember the matchup that they had a year prior, I believe it was at Destination X when Christian was the champ, and then they just continued. I've seen these guys wrestle tag team against each other. It was really solid matches all around, and you really got to see a lot with these matches, like really just about it. And the only thing I'll other add is I remember Kaz and I believe Black Rain was on this, and Dustin Rhodes is Black Rain during this time. That's the only other thing I could really mention. But yeah, this show was solid.
Yeah, the Black Rain thing, actually, I've got a segment set aside for us today. We're going to talk Black Rain and Relic a little bit later on today. Man, yeah, you're right there. Definitely right on the money with that one. Larkin, Hurls, anything you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I thought the Johnny Devine pairing with Team 3D was really, really random. I thought that it kind of just seemed like they were looking for Johnny Devine to do something, and then, well, we'll stick him in here. But there was some funny stuff, like you said, Larkin, that came from that. The AJ Tomko stuff, I enjoyed that. They were part of the Christian Coalition. The main event was really good, and so was the Gail Kim Awesome Kong match. So, yeah, a pretty decent pay-per-view. Nothing too bad about it, but nothing that's really, really amazing.
I think a lot of the times, especially in TNA in this time and era, most of their pay-per-views were really freaking good for the most part. Some, we had some duds and all and some bad angles at times, but the wrestling, the roster and stuff was just so fucking incredible at this time. You guys mentioned the Team 3D and the X Division stuff. I kind of remember, the skits with, I believe it was a Motor City Machine Guns kind of poking fun of them and calling them fat. And I remember like Brother Ray and Devon at the time trying to like make weight and stepping on the scale and all that. And it was some pretty funny stuff. At the time there were times I'd see skits and I just thought, God, this is fucking stupid. But then there are times that I'd see it and I thought, I'd crack up laughing. The one thing that I do want to say I forgot, and I'm going to get you guys' opinion on it real quick too, is we've said the name of Robert Roode as opposed to Bobby Roode. This was kind of the time where he was doing, like kind of the Mr. Wall Street gimmick. Mm-hmm. I will say this, and I'm not just kind of tooting my own horn here, but I did the fantasy booking stuff a lot. But I remember when I saw him and Bobby Roode come out and do his thing like this, I always thought that there was a real legitimate star in the making with Robert Roode at the time, with the gimmick that he was doing. I thought that he just had a lot of potential to go far. Obviously he did with the company. I don't know exactly how well he's being used in the WWE at this time, but he had one of the best, if not the best, world title reign in TNA history. So I just did you guys kind of see it back then too, or was he just still kind of a meh guy too? Obviously, the beer money thing came around and kind of forgot all about his singles potential for a while.
I remember when he was looking for the manager, and they brought in the greats like Bobby the Brain Heenan and sensational Sherry Martel. He was somebody. He had that look. He had very Kurt Hennig like, and he was just good. There was tons of potential with that guy. He was in WWE developmental. They were going to sign him, but he did some appearances on Heat back in the day. But I'm like, it was kind of WWE's loss at the time because he had such potential. He was the enforcer of Team Canada. Then they have him in this role. With what he's doing now in WWE, he's tag champ with Chad Gable. But like I said, the Glorious, it's great for a theme song perspective. But what we saw in TNA and how he would go into the whole beer money and longest reigning champion, and the team with Austin Aries. He was just very good at this particular time period, going into 2008, wrestling guys like Booker T, and his star was right there on the rise. Go ahead, Hurls.
Yeah, I think that Robert Roode, I think they actually, I thought his push was a little too late, I think. Well, it wasn't too late because, obviously the Bobby Roode stuff was great. He did some great stuff with James Storm. We all remember that feud in 2012. But I think even though at this time, I thought that TNA could have pushed him to the main event. I thought he could have been pushed at this time, legitimately. I thought that they were working on that. And then I was kind of confused when they did the whole beer money thing because I thought it was kind of a step back at the time. But obviously that kind of proved me wrong. But that's just kind of what I thought of Robert Roode around this time.
I agree with you, Hurls. I think actually at the time I thought he had kind of the main event star written all over him. A lot of people that have actually seen my fantasy booking stuff that I've done and columns in the past, where I've talked about old stuff that I've done and ideas that I've had. I can't remember if it was 2008 or 2009. I want to guess 2009, but Bobby Lashley had left the WWF or WWE at the time, and he had started MMA, and really Bobby wasn't that good of a fighter, but at the time he was undefeated and he proved very much as a fighter. Someone should mute their microphone back there. I had this vision, because Lashley came from WWE. He had his hot run, main evented or not main evented, but had that big, huge angle at WrestleMania 23, but was undefeated as an MMA fighter. Comes over that crit. I always envisioned this feud with Lashley and Robert Roode at the time, kind of feuding over the world title. Ironically, years and years down the road, they gave us some great matches and a great feud. So kind of weird. I was just way too early at the time, and honestly, if they would have listened to my ideas at that time, it would have been a dud. But they got it right in the future there. So speaking of Team Canada, we head to Against All Odds. Now, Scott Steiner had taken a liking to Petey Williams, so much that he challenged Petey to a match for his World Championship Feast or Fired briefcase and his own X Division Championship title shot briefcase. So, Scott, we got someone talking there, guys?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Okay, sorry, I thought I interrupted there. So we have Scott Steiner defeating Petey Williams to take both opportunities for himself. We know where this led to eventually with Petey Williams becoming Little Papa Pump. Only other really highlight that I saw, Styles and Tom Kerr retaining their tag team titles against BG James and Bob Armstrong. And the reason I bring this up is what the fuck is Bob Armstrong even doing in a match in 2008? Just kind of weak shit. It kind of seems like Against the Odds was really a shitty kind of throwaway pay-per-view in my opinion. I loved the Little Papa Pump stuff. I thought Petey and Scott Steiner did some great stuff together, and it's a shame that in 2000, I think, was it 2017 or 18? I feel like we could have gotten a reunion with that, and they dropped the ball on that. But Hurls, anything about Against the Odds you want to say there?
Anything you'd like to add, Hurls?
Not really. I mean, it was like I said, it was a good pay-per-view. I didn't really care for the Judas Macias Abyss stuff. Thought it was just, it was kind of a ripoff of Kane Undertaker in my opinion. But I love the little Petey stuff. That was great. I had no problem with that. So that's really all that sticks out.
All right, I'll go. I think on my end, like, you look at this show, like, it's funny, like, the women's match on this was Tracy Brooks and Peyton Banks. Peyton Banks, who was Rain, and, Shimmer and Ring of Honor. And it's funny now just to look at her, what she's doing. I mean, she has her own professional wrestling school now, Oos Wrestling in Hawaii. She's still doing her thing, producing talent, which is cool. So we have another wrestling promotion there. And she was also great, and then Tracy Brooks at this particular time period. Steiner, Little Petey Pump, that was great. It was hilarious, and I thought they had a great dynamic with one another. Bob Armstrong, when he was there, the Feast are fired, and this was just to lead up to Lockdown 2008, with which we're going to get to with Kip and BG, the turn, because he was upset that he didn't pick Kip, and, we had Bullet Bob in there, the legendary Bullet Bob. Eric Young and James Storm, the drinking title was what it was. Awesome Kong and ODB was fine. Abyss and Judas Macias and the Barbed Wire Massacre, I thought it was fine. Judas Macias, as what he is now. He's on Lucha Underground as Mil Muertes, and, he's Ricky Menderos, Wrestling Society X. It was fine, but in all, just to look at this show up and down, I think it was fine. It was just one of those pay-per-views. It was solid, but, really, it was You know what I'm saying?
I just really, and I apologize for actually shitting on Against All Odds, I realized that in my notes I missed so much. So thank you guys for covering me there. Kong, Awesome Kong is now the champ at this point. She retained over ODB. I did miss the Barbed Wire Massacre 2 thing. And then, we had, Johnny inviting Team 3D. They looked to destroy the X Division and that 6-man street fight against Lethal and the Motor City Machine Guns. The belt was also on the line. Had Team 3D lost, they'd be forced to work with that weight limit, which we kind of mentioned earlier. And Jay Lethal got a table match, wasn't it? Where Jay Lethal dropped Divine through the table, retained the X Division title.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Angle against Christian again. But this time around we had, Tomko ended up turning on Christian. So AJ had turned on Christian prior.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Tomko actually turned on Christian. So the Christian Coalition, which was Tomko and AJ Styles, kind of his lackeys, they kind of join up with Kurt Angle there. So I apologize for missing that stuff. I will say, I loved the main eventing with Angle and Christian. I think Christian Cage, gave his all for TNA when he was there. And, I've heard people criticize it. And it's like, what the fuck were you watching? Kurt Angle gave his all in everything. And I feel like these were two main event guys going at it. A lot of people shit on TNA for what they did putting AJ Styles in a tag team minimal role. But if you've seen AJ Styles' interview, he said this was the funnest time of his career, just being a goof out of himself. I wasn't a fan of Judas Macias either. Barbed Wire Massacre stuff is cool. They really did kind of ruin Abyss. This was a bad knockoff. But, Abyss was kind of a knockoff between, a cross between Kane and Mankind. But, I think Abyss held his own and all. But some Russo stuff for sure. And I know Hurls is a Russo guy these days, but, that's the thing there. Larkin, what did you think of Little Papa Pump? I know Hurls and I kind of gave our perspective on it. I feel like Petey really stepped into his own, just kind of becoming Scott Steiner in this. He looked more ripped than ever, but man, I love Petey Williams, and I wish they would have done more. And I feel like this could have been a really successful tag team too, in my opinion.
I was thoroughly entertained. I loved the whole thing. I mean, I thought them as a team, them against each other, then the addition of Raka Khan, who was actually, before this, she was in a developmental talent in a WWE before she came to Impact. I mean, it was fine. I thought the whole thing, it just made me laugh, and I was thoroughly entertained the entire time. So,
we interviewed Petey Williams on the HeelCast a while back, and this is when he had just kind of finally came back into Impact. I believe it was it 2018? Hurls, were you on the show with us?
Yeah, for when you guys interviewed him, no, that was Impact, dude.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and I believe it may have been 2017. God, how time flies and all, but he had said that he's willing to sign a new contract if they bring Steiner around, and Petey was really wanting to do either a new version of Team Canada or to reunite him and Scott Steiner, and I really feel like a ball got dropped. They acknowledged it on Impact TV, but I don't know. Do you guys agree? Like, do you think it would have been nice to see a reunion between the two? Just the last year.
Well, we did get to see, that thing where with Scott Steiner and Petey Williams, like that backstage thing that he put on Twitter. He's like, Scotty, and then he goes, "Fuck you, Petey," and that was the last interaction I remember seeing with them.
Yeah, I remember that. I would have liked to see a new Team Canada. I think they could have easily done that with Petey as the leader, and I think it could have possibly elevated Petey to more of an Impact player. No pun intended, but I think that would have been a good storyline because there's a lot of great Canadian talent up in BCW, let me tell you.
And there's another reason also, Hurls, that you're forgetting. And do you know what that is?
Do you mean like Scott D'Amore being there? And
I know you want the muscle that is A1 back.
Yeah, you got A1. A1's right there, You got A1, you got Tyson Dukes. You could start a new Team Canada with a few of the originals.
I think you could start the Team Canada and go a little bit awkward, make it an odd couple, and add Crazy Steve and Rosemary in there. I think there was a lot of ways. I feel like, in my opinion, guys, I feel like Petey Williams is one of the most underrated, underappreciated, and honestly, a guy that could have been a much bigger star than he was and should have been. I feel like even having Petey, Petey may not be the most extremely charismatic guy out there cutting a promo, but he can talk and he can do it all. I mean, he's a fantastic wrestler, one of the coolest finishers ever. And I hate the fact that even at this day, in 2019, I feel like they're just kind of sitting him around and wasting him. And, he got over. Remember when he challenged Eli Drake for the belt this past, in 2018, when they were doing the Canada thing. I just feel like this guy has been so special, but never used the right way that he should have been in his career. I feel like him and Sanjay could have been tag team champs. I feel like him and Scott Steiner could have done something, but I hope that Impact in the final years here, they actually start doing more with Petey Williams. So that's my thoughts on that. I know it's kind of going off topic, but hail Petey. So we had to, in March, we go to Destination X, one of my favorite pay-per-views that TNA used to always put on. We have LAX, the original LAX, Homicide and Hernandez. Maybe new viewers see them as the OGs, defeating the Motor City Machine Guns and the Rock and Rave to become the #1 contenders for the tag team titles. Jay Lethal retaining against Petey Williams. We had EY and Kaz defeating Black Rain and Relic, who we're gonna discuss that here in just a moment. We had Awesome Kong defeating both Gail Kim and ODB in a 3-way. We had Curryman and Shark Boy defeating Team 3D in a fucking fish market street fight. Hurls, that's your boy Russo. We're also going to discuss the Curryman thing in a sec too. Robert Roode defeating Booker T in a strap match. The good push of Robert Roode continuing there. We had Rhino defeating James Storm in Elevation X2. The feud stemmed from Rhino destroying the beer drinking championship belt. Another Russo thing. We'll probably talk Elevation X here in a minute as well. And then in the main event, we had Christian, Kevin Nash, and Samoa Joe defeating Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, and Tomko. Big pay-per-view, good one in my opinion. We had, there's obviously the obvious stuff there, but I don't know. Before we discuss the Curryman thing and Black Rain and Relic, Larkin, anything you want to chime in about the actual pay-per-view itself?
Again, another solid addition. I mean, I was really enjoying what they did at the start of 2008. Everything on this, it was cool. I mean, Jay Lethal and Petey Williams was great for the Exhibition Championship. I liked the tag match. I know we're going to get into the Relic and Curryman and the whole nine, but yeah, everything on this was it was decent. It makes me smile bringing back these memories. That's all I really can say, buddy.
Hurls, anything you want to chime in real quick?
Yeah, I think. Well, we got to be careful too, because Dutch Mantel also booked a lot of crazy stuff, like the electrified cage at Lockdown. So while this could be some of Russo's stuff, it definitely could be Dutch Mantel stuff as well. But
that is accurate.
Elevation X sucked. I hated that match because what the hell can you do on that? You know, I mean, it was. I think the fans were into it just because, like, okay, one of these guys fall, that, you know, they're gonna break a leg or break an arm or something. But I really did not like that match. I thought the main event was fine. I enjoyed the Bobby Roode Booker T strap match. I was fine with that. Curry Man, you know, funny story. I don't want to take too long, but I showed a couple of my friends who were just kind of like casual wrestling fans. I showed them Curry Man's entrance. They thought it was like one of the most hilarious things they've ever seen. I had to like replay that entrance like 10 times because they were just laughing their asses off on the couch. So Curry Man must have did something right there. Black Rain, I'm just gonna say that Dustin Rhodes was on a lot of drugs when he did this character, so that may be a reflection of what you did see on TV. So just wanted to point that out. But when you go further into it, I'll give a little more comment on that.
All right. Let me just add this, just because, you know, as I'm looking at this, Elevation X, like Hurls said, you know, they were limited because what the hell are you going to do? Like you mentioned, they're so high up, and it's like one of those, it's like a scaffold match. It's what it is. Relic, who was Johnny the Bull Stamboli, and Black Rain, that's killer spelled backwards. I mean, it was fine, you know, feuding Eric Young and Kaz. The Curry Man and Shark Boy cracked me up because this is when Shark Boy was Stone Cold Shark Boy. And yeah, everything else was fine and solid. Go ahead, Raven.
Sorry, having issues with that mute button here on my laptop. It's a little bit sensitive. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say what Larkin said. It's a scaffold match. So, yeah, I mean, just to dive in, I didn't realize that was Johnny the Bull Stamboli, but, yeah, they kept bringing up that Relic was killer spelled backwards. I mean, God, this was fucking stupid. Hurls, you know, the main thing I do want people to realize, too, that Hurls brought up, you know, Dustin Rhodes was going through a period in his life where he was, you know, hitting the bottle, hitting the pills pretty hard. And he was very, very overweight. Now, I'm going to say this, like, I love Dustin Rhodes. Gold Dust, I'm a huge fan, always will be. I think Dustin is the best talent out of his dad, his brother. I think Dustin and Gold Dust was the best of them all. I'm a bigger fan of him than anyone else in his family ever. But, yeah, you know, it was basically, what was he, 7 in WCW? It was kind of like him and Russo. You know, they put this stupid fucking gimmick together. And this was the thing with Dustin Rhodes out of anything, you know, past his first WCW when he was a natural. Then he became Goldust in WWF at the time. But it's like anything outside of it, he had these terrible knockoff gimmicks trying to be Goldust, but they were all so terribly bad. And a lot of them had Vince Russo attached to it. He was out of shape, wasn't having good matches. The gimmick was dumb. Pairing him with this Relic shit was just stupid. It was cringeworthy bad. And it's just, you felt bad for Dustin Rhodes. It's great to see that he, you know, not only got himself cleaned up, but got in great shape and kind of revived his career towards the end, even though I haven't been watching it because I don't watch that company. But, I mean, is there anything else anyone else wants to chime in about Black Rain or Relic?
I could just say that Johnny the Bull Stamboli, what they did, I remember him seeing him on Lucha Libre USA and just doing his AAA work where he continued this. He's a hell of a talent. Black Rain, I'm really happy to see Goldust just come back to, you know, just back to where he is, Dustin Rhodes. I mean, we've seen him, you know, when him and Cody were going against the likes of The Shield and, I mean, Evolution. I mean, there's so many great matches that he had there, and to see him just in better shape and just in better spirits now, it's absolutely amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I just want to say, too, that I actually think that gimmick, Relic, was actually Johnny Stamboli's gimmick that he had on the Indies, and I think that's why they brought him in to pair him up with Dustin Rhodes here. I could be wrong, but if I remember correctly, that was Johnny Stamboli's gimmick on the Indies was Relic, and I think TNA just wanted to bring it in.
All
right. You know, and maybe you're right. I know, Hurl, you know, I'm not trying to do a shit on Russo thing here, and I know Hurls is going to defend Russo like he's on a Russo kick, but, you know, I'll give credit where credit's due. I think Russo takes too much blame sometimes. So if I am just, you know, trying to make it seem like it's a stupid Russo thing and I'm wrong, then I apologize. Curry, you know, Hurls, you said Curry Man must have been doing something right. I'll be honest, Curry Man, the guy who was playing Curry Man, has done a lot of stuff right. And correct me, guys, if I remember correctly, was this? I know it was Christopher Daniels was playing Curryman. Is that because he got fired in the Feast or Fired match and then came back as Curryman?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You know, he did the intro, the hot and spicy. And I remember at the time when I first saw it, I was like, this is so fucking stupid. But the more that time went on, you know, and you saw Daniels come out with the personality that you didn't really see that he had. And I mean, it took a long time until him and Kaz started teaming up as Bad Influence to really see this kind of stuff again and the humor come out. He made it work because Daniels can make anything work. You know, and this may be a topic for a later discussion. I feel like this Daniels was so great for this company and should have been a world champion on it, but the company did him wrong so many different times, and kind of an Eric Young thing too. But he took it, he made it work, and it was good stuff. Hurls, I know you're a Curry man guy. What were you gonna say on that?
I think Daniels was such a team player that he was able to turn anything into gold. And I think actually Curryman was originated in Japan with his when he was in New Japan for a little bit. But I don't know. It was good comic relief. You know, sometimes you need some of that, and I thought he did a great job at that.
Larkin,
anything you wanted to say on the Curryman thing?
Hurls hit it spot on. I was entertained by the whole thing. Just the Shark Bay pretty much telling him to get serious, son. Gotta go fight, son. Team 3, what? And then Curryman goes, oh, Shark Boy, he's so angry. So, I mean, just that whole interaction was so funny.
Yeah, and Shark Boy is awesome, too. I mean, I know we're a fan of Shark Boy on the show, and, you know, we've interacted with him a few times. Daniels and Eric Young, I mean, you talk about team players for the companies and guys that were just handed a bucket of shit and always made it work. Props to both of them, man. The one thing, you know, that I used to always feel with TNA back in these early years, and I know it was like every other year, and I want to say like 2006 and 2008 were the years that I felt like the product was great in the ring, and like when they wanted to be taken serious and be better than WWE, the storylines were just so bad, like on TV that it hampered them, but like the wrestling made up for it. And 2007 and 2009, it was like the storylines were good and the wrestling was good, but I could be wrong. I know it's one way or the other, but I just remember every other year just thinking like, man, this company's just held back by creative and just some stupid shit. You know, that can go on Russo, Dutch Mantel, Jeff Jarrett, you know, a lot of stuff on there. I'm not blaming you know, one person in particular, but I do feel that, and that's always something that I've always felt about TNA. So I don't know if you guys had anything else you wanted to chime in on that. I mean, this is kind of a random thought that I had because we're talking about some stupid shit on there. But, you know, when we went back into 2007, some of the stuff that I would actually say, I was just like, Jesus Christ, this actually got put on television. But I don't know. Either of you have anything you want to chime in on that or not?
No, man. Let's head on into Lock It Down.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Lockdown, April's thing here. Big thing here. So the Stinger, the Icon, returned, announced that he would be on Christian Cage's team at Lockdown. So we got Sting back in the mix, which is always going to be a big thing. So, I mean, some highlights. We have Jay Lethal retaining the X Division title and the Escape the Cage match. The Escape the Cage match, that was, you know, it was weird, but it was neat. And it was always entertaining. You had Roxy Laveau becoming the #1 contender for the Knockouts title. The New Age Outlaws, a.k.a. BKM, a.k.a. the James Gang, all these different names. A split up here between the Outlaws. We had BG James defeating Kip James. I think the less talented of the two getting the victory there. Kaz and Super Eric win in a Tough the Cage match. I remember watching this not too long ago and just like, Jesus Christ, this was ridiculous. We had Christian, Sting, Rhino, and Kevin Nash were Team Christian. And Matt Morgan defeating AJ Styles, Tom Coe, Team 3D, and the Cowboy James Storr. And then we had Samoa Joe winning his first TNA World Championship from Kurt Angle after putting his career on the line. Kurt Angle legitimately getting hurt in that match. If I'm trying to remember right, that was when they kind of did Joe having the MMA thing and kind of wearing the shorts. And they made it kind of look more like a real shoot fight in that. This was a big pay-per-view on the fact that Samoa Joe got the belt from Kurt Angle, one of the biggest rivalries in the history of this company. Sting's return. We have the Kaz and Super Eric stuff. Larkin, anything, your thoughts on Lockdown?
Solid. I hated the BG James, Kip James match. I thought that was the only downer. Roxy Laveau. Nikki Roxx is an amazing talent. We also had Salinas in this match, a.k.a. Shelly Martinez, who was doing her thing with LAX at the time. Kaz and Super Eric, it was fine. We got to see a lot of tag teams in here as well. Raisha Saeed, a.k.a. Cheerleader Melissa, a.k.a. Mariposa, and Lucha Underground doing her thing. Man, this and Samoa Joe winning the title was great just because everybody wanted to see Joe get that belt. It was fine. You know what I'm saying? This is when Kurt Angle's MMA thing was going around. This is also around the time, I believe, when he called in on a radio show and challenged Chuck Liddell, trying to get that MMA career off one Kurt Angle. So, I mean, it was cool. It was an interesting time, and again, it was a solid show. That's really all I can say.
Yeah, I remember this event, I believe, was in Boston, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Lowell, which Boston.
Yep,
so you're
Lowell, I'm sorry, Lowell, Massachusetts. Is this where they had Danny Bonaducci in the pre-show?
No, that's a year later. That's a year later.
Okay. But here's the thing I'm going to say. Samoa Joe definitely deserved the title. I just think they waited so long. It kind of killed his momentum a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I actually did not like the MMA stuff, and I don't think the fans did either. If I remember correctly, they were chanting something that was against the MMA portion in the match. Pro wrestling and MMA, you can combine certain things of MMA, but don't try to make it a total MMA shoot style match. I just didn't think that part worked. But they definitely picked it up in the second half of the match, and when Joe finally won the title, I think, a lot of us were celebrating because it had been so long, coming for him. I really loved the Lethal Lockdown match with Christian, Sting, Nash, and Rhino and Matt Morgan. I thought that was a really good one. Jay Lethal was fine. Roxy was fine. BG, Kip, it is what it is. But Kaz and Super Eric, whatever. Is it now? I got to ask one last question to you, Larkin or R-A-V. Was this the part where Super Eric got out of the cuffs somehow? It was like such a crazy spot.
Yeah,
how the hell did he do that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was actually kind of cool.
Well, I was also just going to add, look at what BG James is doing now. Him and Jeff Jarrett are doing Jeff Jarrett and the Roadie again. And I mean,
yeah.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Yep. So, it's like 1995 with them.
With My Baby Tonight, that whole night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
I was actually a big Jeff Jarrett fan back then. I was like a 10-year-old kid. And, I was like the only Double J Jeff Jarrett fan. And, for the small amount of kids that actually admitted to liking wrestling back in those days. But, Hurls, I agree with you. And the fact that I think they waited a little bit long on Samoa Joe. Now, I'm not a huge Samoa Joe guy. I never have been. But the way that they booked him and got him going in the company in those early days was a thing of fucking sheer brilliance and genius. A lot of people complain that Angle shouldn't have beat him in the debut match. I disagree. I think they kind of did it the right way. And it's funny too because everyone if you listen to the show, and I know you guys know me, like I'm an MMA guy. I love me UFC. Here's the thing too. So I was such a huge pro wrestling fan growing up. So when UFC came around, it was still in so much popularity, and US, when they first got really big, on Spike TV and all, and the Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, UFC's popularity was huge. It just really peaked, and I hated it. And I hated MMA, and I hated everything about it, and thought it was just, dumb meathead idiots beating the shit out of each other, and there was no skill and all that. And I hated the fact that it was taking not only popularity away from professional wrestling, but I was really worried that it was actually going to be the death of pro wrestling because I felt like, who's going to watch fake fights when they can see it for real now? So I hated MMA at the start, and so I did not like this at the time. Obviously, my opinion has changed on MMA, but just a fun tidbit there. Road Dogg against Billy Gunn. We've seen it so many times already. I think Billy Gunn is by far the superior talent. Another guy that his career should have been better. The one thing I did want to ask, what was your guys' thoughts on this Super Eric gimmick? It was. Another thing, Eric Young, they give him something stupid and he makes it great. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I think EY made everything work. It seemed like they were always trying to push this guy to be something, but there's so much goofiness attached for so many years that he could never really go far with it. But, Hurls, I know you just kind of mentioned him escaping the cuffs and all. Did you have any thoughts on Super Eric just overall?
So TNA was so good at this time. I guess I probably gave him a pass when it came to Super Eric, but I can see, someone just tuning in for the first time and thinking it's just absolutely stupid. But Super Eric, what can you say? Eric Young actually kind of made this work. so I guess that kind of went in TNA's favor. Maybe you give that to you give that gimmick to somebody else, and then maybe it just blows up in their face. I don't know, but I guess I enjoyed what he was able to make the character.
For me, I thought it was entertaining. You can give that guy anything, and he gets it over. Simple as that. He was the Dusty Rhodes, the baby of TNA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, literally, Eric Young, team player, everything they ever gave this guy, he made work, and he had such shit at times he was handed, and he just always fucking did great. The other thing I guess I wanted to point out, too, is let's also not forget that at this time, and maybe even, if you look back at the history of this company, Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle is the rivalry that really defined TNA, in my opinion. Do you guys, any dispute in that?
No. Yeah, valid point. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like this was the culmination, the big fucking payoff that they finally got. Finally Samoa Joe becomes a champ, so it was a good moment, overall. So this was a pretty big pay-per-view, in my opinion. So that was early April. Now on April 15th, 2 championships changed hands on Impact. First, we had Petey Williams cash in the Feast or Fired X Division contract given back to him from Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. Used it in on Jay Lethal to become a 2-time X Division champion. And then in a 3-way tag team match, we had the aforementioned Super Eric and Kaz defeating AJ Styles and Tomko and LAX. I mean, those are 2 huge fucking teams in the history of this company to become the tag team champions. And then on the same show, you had old Jimmy Cornette stripping both Kaz and Super Eric of the titles, as Eric Young would not admit to being Super Eric, which I thought was stupid stuff. No, I mean, really, LAX has been, kind of the dominant team in the history of TNA so far. You have AJ Styles and Tomko. They made Tomko a bigger deal than he should have been. AJ Styles, of course, even when he took a back seat, he was still AJ Styles and kind of Mr. TNA and their franchise guy at this point. So, I mean, a huge victory for those guys and kind of a shitty thing to just strip them from it. Anything you want to chime in, or should we just move on to Sacrifice?
Let's sacrifice it on, man.
All right, guys. So, we start to Sacrifice. Now, we mentioned how Kurt Angle got injured in that match with Samoa Joe for real. So, Kurtzy actually gets pulled from the pay-per-view the day of Sacrifice due to that. So, they have the Deuces Wild tournament to crown new tag team champions. Larkin, you're the goddamn Mike Tenay and stuff. I can't necessarily remember what the Deuces Wild is. Do you remember what this is off the top of your head? If not, maybe Hurls will. But Larkin, anything about this?
It was one of just those tournaments just to crown a new. It's just they give it a name. It was a tournament to crown new tag team champions, which we saw in this, which would become LAX. And Team 3D had a great final. The memorable quarterfinal with Awesome Kong and BG James as a team. Kip James and Matt Morgan were a team. I mean, Kaz as the replacement with the Terradome match was great, and I think Joe and Steiner and him, now this was Steiner, cashing in Feast or Fired, was good. So pretty much, if I was to say the show was good, but yeah, the Deuces Wild, man, it was just like one of those normal tournaments, just gave a nice little name to it. Hurls, go ahead.
The one tidbit you forgot, they picked these names out of a hat.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask, actually, if it was like Battle Bowl or what from WCW.
It was very similar to Battle Bowl. Yeah, they picked all these names out of hat. Obviously, that's how you got Kip James and Awesome Kong, and I believe you had Sting and what's it? For some reason, I remember Sting was with was he with Matt Morgan? I believe
he was with James Storm.
Or James Storm. Okay. I remember they faced Team 3D. I believe in this tournament.
Yep, that was a quarterfinal. Yep.
Okay. Now this pay-per-view I thought was it was okay. I think the main event was pretty good because Kaz had a really good showing in this match if I remember correctly, or maybe that was the next pay-per-view with the ladder match. But yeah, I think it was kind of cool to reward Kaz in the main event. They're trying to elevate him into something bigger. So Steiner obviously is always gold, and I think this was a way for Samoa Joe to get built up with the title. So they kind of wanted to give him guys that you probably figured he'd beat, but I thought it made Kaz look really good, and Steiner's obviously a guy at this point in his career to put these two guys over, but he's still a main event. He's a main event player, so he gives some of that main event rub to Joe and Kaz. So I like the main event here.
Yeah, and Kaz is actually going to be a topic that I'm looking forward to discussing a little bit later on here on the show. I got some thoughts on that, and I'm glad that you guys are chiming in on it. And Scott Steiner too, man. One thing that kind of pops into my mind real fast is, remember when Steiner, he didn't come over to the WWE from WCW, and then it was a big thing when he debuted, challenged Triple H at the Royal Rumble, and then I believe No Way Out. But his career, they said he was washed up, didn't have it. His WWF run as Big Papa Pump was really a huge flop and disappointment. Should I remember, what was it when Steiner tripped and fell off the apron or something?
Yeah, that was when he fought Test, yeah.
Yeah, just some embarrassing shit. And then didn't him and Test team up after Stacy Keibler and all?
Yeah, it was bad. He became Test's slave. Yeah, it was terrible.
But, he came over to TNA and he fucking had some damn good matches. He showed that he still had it. And it was just impressive as hell, in my opinion. And it just you talk about a fucking redemption story and all that. Scotty Steiner really did that in TNA. And that was one thing that I always loved about this company was, the way that they would take some guys who WWF used wrong, or some legends, some ECW or WCW guys. DDP had a shit run in WWF, and Steiner and Raven and all that. And he really let them be who they were. And I will always love TNA for that. The other thing I just had to ask you guys about, I see it, I wrote down here that Gail Kim won the Knockouts Makeover Battle Royal to become the #1 contender. Knockouts Makeover, either of you guys know, was there something in particular with that, or just a stupid fucking name?
I can only imagine she was feuding with the Beautiful People, probably.
That was my thoughts, too.
Yeah, I really had nothing to add, because once you said Makeover, the first thing was the Mean Girls that were the Beautiful People, so yeah, same here.
Those are my thoughts as well, and I don't know if I have it not written down to talk about the Beautiful People, but in either this show or the next one, but we will discuss that, because let's be honest, we've seen the Beautiful People over the last few years, and it hasn't been good, but they were fucking on fire and an amazing act in the early days of TNA. So, moving on, though, we have Slammiversary. So, and you know what, man? I don't think Slammiversary back then was... I know they advertised as the anniversary show, but I feel like some Slammiversary cards were just not what they are now, and over the later years. But, we had... So, Kaz challenged Petey Williams for the X Division title, but was unsuccessful due to Steiner and Runraka Khan's interference. Mm-hmm. Abyss returns to TNA and saves Kaz from a beatdown. Kind of strange there. One thing I wanted to point out that I thought is awesome is, you actually had Steiner going out of his way to help the lower middle card guy and X Division guy, which you don't see a lot of that, It's normally the henchman helping out the main guy only. So it was nice to see Steiner do that. That was a huge plus for me that I loved about the company. LAX retaining against Team 3D in what became, one of the best fucking tag team feuds, not only for the company, but really in the past decade. AJ Styles defeats Kurt Angle. There was a storyline going on with AJ Styles and Karen Angle at the time, kind of having a romance, or if she was cheating on. No, did she full on leave Kurt for AJ? Was that the thing?
Well, yeah, then they had their honeymoon, and then AJ was tickling the gators, and then they kisses her goodnight, and just AJ being all goofy. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can remember it all. And then the King of the Mountain match, we have Samoa Joe winning the King of the Mountain against Christian Cage, Rhino, Booker T, and Robert Roode. So Samoa Joe standing tall at the end, as Larkin kind of said, probably against guys that you should expect him to beat in that match. I don't think anyone expected Robert Roode or Rhino to come out on top. Christian or Booker T probably being his only, possible competition. I guess the only thing I want to get into, the Styles and Karen Angle storyline at the time. Anyone have any thoughts on that? You can give your thoughts on the match. It was the only thing I think about it is, looking back, it's kind of ironic considering what happened with her and Jeff Jarrett, but. Anyways, Hurls, thoughts or anything you want to say there?
Yeah, this pay-per-view, it wasn't bad. I think I liked the King of the Mountain match. It was really good. The Styles Angle stuff, I was okay with it just because the Styles he was getting the character for once, and he was mostly just the athlete, the phenomenal athlete. But now, he's starting his goofy character, and I thought he actually played that really, really well. LAX Team 3D, what can you say? You can watch any of their matches, and they're all really freaking good. And, that's really all I have to say about that.
Okay, here's what I'll add to this. Same with Hurls. Styles and Angle, you know what you're going to get there. Absolutely amazing. You talk about what we have with the King of the Mountain, Joe, Booker T, Christian, Ronald, Bobby Roode, same, and Kevin Nash was the special guest enforcer. Now, what's interesting is when Awesome Kong did these like open challenge with the fans, the first one she defeated was Serena Deeb, who would go on in the WWE as a part of the Straight Edge Society. Then we would see her come back to Impact during the feud with Magnus and Mickey James against James Storm and her. That was James Storm's partner when, James Storm, pushed Mickey, train tracks kind of deal. I remember Josie Robinson would actually later, it's kind of funny, she wrestled Awesome Kong because Sojourner Bolt. She would later become Sojourner Bolt as a part of the Contourage. So, I mean, it was an interesting show. And again, just solid action top to bottom. Like you mentioned, LAX Team 3D. Man, there's some good stuff.
No doubt, I agree with you guys. One thing here before I hop to the next one is I put a question in the comments here. And if Hurls or Larkin can take a look at that at some point and just respond to me,
yeah, I got you.
That would be great. But so yeah, we move on to Victory Road in July. Or Hurls, you got a chance to talk on Summerversary, am I
right? Yes, I did.
Okay, didn't want to skip you there, my man.
Oh, I'm sorry, Raven, but yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention was Moose was actually teaming with the Beautiful People. Now, Moose was a wrestler by the name of Mickey Knuckles. She appeared like a couple times. Very good talent, but yeah, that was like her very brief appearance in Impact. TNA.
I remember that now, and actually when you said that, I was like, wait, what? Moose was around back in these days? I figured it was with the NFL or even playing college. Threw me off there. I forget all about female Moose, but yeah. So we move on to the July pay-per-view there that used to be in TNA all the time, which was Victory Road. We had Team TNA winning in the third round of the World X Cup. Was this the first time that they did the World X Cup?
I believe so. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did you say the first time ever doing the World X Cup?
Yeah. Was this the first year they did it, or was that earlier?
Oh, they did it in 2004.
Well, that's right. I can't even believe I was wrong there. Yeah. They did do it at a very early years there. We had LAX defeating the Beer Money tag team now, who came out with Jackie Gata, or not Jackie Gata, but Jacqueline Moore in a fans revenge match. Now, the fans revenge match, that was where they would have like the straps and whip the wrestlers. Am I right?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. That's a crazy thing that TNA did, and I'm surprised they did, because you could just imagine what could possibly go wrong. But that was cool that they would do that. I was always entertained by those. We had Taylor Wilde shocking the world by beating Awesome Kong for the Knockouts Championship. Now, this was that storyline where Awesome Kong had just kind of ran through anyone, was doing open challenges to like anyone in the crowd, right? Like you were talking about with Serena Deeb, am I right?
Yes, correct.
And so Taylor Wilde if I remember right, she came out, made her debut at Victory Road, and beat Awesome Kong that night. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it was like really quick too, right? I think it was like only like 4 or 5 minutes, right, Hurls?
Yeah. Yeah, because it came out it was very surprising.
And she beat her with like a roll up or something, am I right?
Yes, sir. The 1-2
the
shocker victory roll, yep.
Yeah. So that was cool. I mean, I never expected that. I figured it would happen at some point, but that was just never knew exactly when. Team Mexico won the X Cup via Ultimate X in the final round. We had Kurt Angle Team 3D defeating Christian, AJ Styles, and Rhino in Ultimate X. Now, obviously, we know that Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, and Tomko were a unit now because of the stuff going on with AJ Styles and Karen Angle at the time. That's why we have AJ Styles back with his old boy Christian and Rhino. Joe versus Booker T. Now, I remember this because I remember actually it went into 2 pay-per-views, but I remember buying this like 3-pack. TNA was like a Cross the Line DVD set or whatever at the time. So we have Joe defending against Booker T. It becomes a ref bump and interference fest. Sting came down to try and calm Joe down at this time, but he wasn't having any of it. So then we have Sting hitting Joe with the baseball bat. Booker T pins Joe while Sharmell is actually the one counting down the pinfall. And then the two walked up the ramp with the title belt before the match was officially declared a no contest. So it was, and then they bring it on to the next pay-per-view. This Joe and Booker T thing, with Booker T being the name, you would figure this would be a big thing, but Booker was just, and we'll discuss this at the very end of the show, but Booker T was not the Booker T we remembered. This was a kind of period for TNA, in my opinion, that kind of stalled on him a little bit. The Joe title reign for me, it didn't get the justice it probably should have. Larkin, your thoughts on Victory Road and everything going on in this point?
Really, I hate to sound like a broken record, Raven, but solid. I mean, it's so funny as I look back at who was on Team Mexico. What's great is Milano Collection AT, I remember him in Ring of Honor. I remember actually being in attendance watching him against Claudio Castagnoli, who would become Cesaro. Puma, who was actually on Team TNA. That was who would later go on to be Manic Suicide, when TJ Perkins, TJP. You get to see Alex Kosov in there, Doug Williams, Tyson Dukes. So many great talents that we would see come and go within TNA Impact Wrestling. And just everything on this, man. Again, just solid show. And like you mentioned, Raven, I got to say this to you. I got to say it to you, man. I had those Cross the Line DVD sets. Still have them today. Love them.
I own them myself. Although you can get them on the Global Wrestling Network and not worry about the DVD disc, but I own them myself. I'm so proud of it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I actually do have. I think they had 3 or 4 of them.
Correct.
And I believe I got I think 3 out of the 4. I think I still had to get one more. But yeah, this pay-per-view I believe hailed from Houston, which was Booker T's hometown. So that's maybe why he got the main event spot here. But
you mean it's not Harlem?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, bring in old Big T, Ahmed Johnson.
I just think the main event fell flat. I thought on this, like, it was a good match. Like, these two put in really good effort, but it's just like there wasn't enough buildup between these two to the point where you were really caring about it. In my opinion, at least, I didn't really. At least that's how my perspective was of this. And I remember the Ultimate X being pretty fun. You know, Taylor Wilde, what can you say? Like, that girl should still be in Impact today. Why they ever got rid of her, I don't know if that was a Bischoff or Pritchard or Gaburik. I don't know, but it was a big mistake because she was super talented. Super, super talented. Just seemed like a really, really nice person, too. I think though, like, a lot what happened with her was the whole I don't know if you guys heard about she was working in a sunglasses hut while she was wrestling for TNA. I think that kind of gave TNA a really bad name, and I think it's possible that may have led to her release by just saying that. As weird as it sounds, but companies do, look for stuff like that if you're kind of bad-mouthing them or you're saying, oh, I'm not making enough. So it's possible that may have been one of the reasons she left. But other than that, I really have nothing to really say on this pay-per-view. It was decent.
Yeah, I agree with you about Taylor Wilde. I actually do remember that story as well. I feel like this girl kind of had the star potential. She really came out of nowhere, but everyone got behind her. Had a great look to her, good-looking girl. And was able to work a good match and, had that underdog thing and beat Kong. I mean, that was huge at the time when she beat her. But so we move on to August. What soon became Hardcore Justice originally was Hard Justice. Now, leading up to it, I mentioned earlier when Team 3D put Christian Cage through the glass table. That moment, it always stands up to me when we got into this feud. I always felt like Christian really busted his ass and deserved everything that he got, and he proved that, he was no mid-carder, he was a main eventer. But this really made Christian look tougher and stronger, more badass and hardcore for me to go through this, and it really made TNA look more like that ECW, to go places that WWE wouldn't. And I don't know, that moment just always stands out to me, and I always wanted to mention that. But so we had Petey Williams defending the X Division title against Consequences Creed, who is, I believe, now a star in the WWE and a star in a porno tape as well. You had Beer Money defeating LAX to win the tag team titles. So the first tag team championship reign for Beer Money. Jay Lethal defeating Sanjay Dutt. We'll talk about that next. Christian and Rhino. So Christian and Rhino back together after the feud that they had prior, defeating Team 3D in a New Jersey street fight. I remember this match being pretty damn good. AJ Styles defeating Angle in a last man standing match. And I'm trying to remember if Frank Trigg was involved with Kurt Angle at this time. And then Samoa Joe defeating Booker T in the rematch. I felt like Hard Justice did a lot for Victory Road that Victory Road failed on. Hurls, any thoughts on Hard Justice?
Not really. I think you're exactly right. I think they just weren't happy with Victory Road, and I think Hard Justice was the one that really kind of made up for that fact. And Consequences Creed, he had a lot of potential. I think TNA may have given up on him a little too early, but him and Petey had a pretty good match there, and I think Consequences Creed had a lot of talent.
I gotta say, Consequences Creed, prepare to face the consequences. Love the vignettes, him and Jay Lethal's Lethal Consequences. Pretty much with this show, like I said, everything was absolutely fine. They did their thing, man. I really just, watching this, it just, again, brings me back to smiles, and just, the Sanjay Dutt Jay Lethal thing I always cracked up with the wedding and how the feud with them over Val, and Val was like the Miss Elizabeth. And yes, Frank Trigg was involved at this time, looking like Kurt Angle's twin brother. So, I mean, we're going to talk some Frank Trigg in the next pay-per-view.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of refresh people that know, so Sanjay Dutt and Jay Lethal were like best friends. Jay Lethal was doing the Black Machismo thing where he was really doing great impressions of the Macho Man. They had SoCal Val, her ugly ass, try to be the Miss Elizabeth in this situation. Just an insult to the great Miss Elizabeth, because I don't know how anyone could ever fight over that ugly girl. I know she seems like a sweetheart. I've been told she is. Just I don't get it. But they had Sanjay turn on Jay Lethal to try and get the girl, but SoCal Val went with Sanjay and turned on Jay Lethal, and it led to I remember at the wedding they had Jake the Snake was there, and it was Jim the Anvil and Kamala and shit like that.
Yeah, George the Animal Steel and all them, kind of homage to what they did back in the day. Yeah.
So yeah, and it kind of gave Sanjay some character which he didn't have, and for a long time the only thing people really saw in Jay Lethal was the Black Machismo thing, and boy, he sure showed everyone else differently. But so we head into No Surrender, and Sheikh Abdul Bashir, who was formerly was he called Davari in the WWE?
Yeah, he was Khosrow Davari. Yep.
No, was this shortly after the whole Muhammad Hussein and the terrorist thing?
It was about 3 years after this, Raven. I mean, Davari did some stuff, like he was on ECW around the time. He managed the Great Khali. He did a lot of stuff. But yeah, this was after his WWE release, and yeah, this is where they had him win the X Division title.
And if I remember right, if he did, it was very rare that he actually wrestled and performed in WWE. Am I right?
Yeah, well, he can say to his credit, he holds a pinfall victory over Shawn Michaels.
Wow. So you had him defeating both Petey Williams and Consequences Creed to win the X Division title. Now, one thing that comes to mind here, and I don't know if we want to have this discussion prior, but I hear a lot of people say that him winning the belt is the time that the X Division title lost and dropped its credibility, because it felt like the Prestige and the guys who won it were no longer that good anymore. I feel it's a little bit of a reach and a big jump. To say that it tarnished the X Division title, but I have heard that argument a lot. I don't think the guy was anything special, and I know the gimmick they were going for. It's definitely. What was I going to say? I mean, today's America. It's cool to hate USA, but there's some still patriotic tendencies back there. So I mean, he was a hated heel and got over. You had Taylor Wilde retaining against Angelina Love. Sanjay Dutt actually defeating Jay Lethal in the Ladder for Love match, and I believe that's when SoCal Val turned on him, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Beer Money retaining their titles against LAX. AJ Styles versus Frank Trigg to a no contest in an MMA match. Really, the only thing I'm going to say is this was just stupid and irrelevant, and props to Frank Trigg, but he really had no business being there. Samoa Joe retained against Kurt Angle, Christian, and Booker T. And so, I mean, we kind of had the mixing MMA with pro wrestling thing. Only thing I'm going to say about that is, there's elements into both, but it's hard to make pro wrestling look that more believable. It's good to mix the two in. I think, to take some MMA elements and make wrestling, selling as far as pro wrestling to make it look more believable and real. They can take some things from it, but the things are too different and they just don't work well together. And TNA has been the shining star to define that, especially, later on we got Rampage and Tito Ortiz and a bunch of dumb shit in there. But, this was a decently big enough pay-per-view for the time. But, Hurls, anything on No Surrender you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I just want to talk about Sheikh Abdul Bashir a little bit. When he first came into TNA, it was really bad. They had, the sound of a plane taking off.
Yeah, the theme, yeah.
And that it lasted maybe a couple weeks, but I caught that. I definitely caught that. They got rid of it after a while, but I thought that was kind of poor taste. And obviously this gimmick was done in WWE 3-4 years before. I mean, I had no problem with Sheikh Abdul Bashir. I thought he was pretty talented. He wasn't anything special. He was just kind of did a lot of basic moves. His gimmick is just, hey, I'm a foreigner, kind of, or I have foreign descent. Really, that's about it.
A terrorist.
Yeah, pretty much. Taylor Wilde obviously keeps gaining credibility. I did not really care for the Sanjay Lethal stuff. It was just, I don't know why. They're both very talented, but just the SoCal Val stuff, I just wasn't really into it. And I believe was this, Larkin, was this the event that AJ Lee was actually at because she was dating?
Oh,
Jay
yes. She was being
Okay.
trained by Jay Lethal, and she was in the crowd watching the match.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
I remember that too.
Beer Money LAX was awesome. AJ versus Frank Drake. Like I said, I don't like the MMA type stuff. You can do a little bit, throw it in a match for a little bit, but I do not want to see a whole match in there. And main event was good.
I have to say, I do remember the chant, "We want wrestling," during AJ Styles and Frank Drake.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I really can add. I just remember the chant of "We want wrestling" through the entire thing.
Yeah, some things they're not going to work well together. And if you do it, you got to make it the right way. And when you try and make something a real fight, because wrestling is a fake fight that looks nothing like a real fight. When you try and take an MMA fight and make it fake looking, it's just going to fail. But I guess the only question here: do you guys feel Sheikh Abdul Bashir winning the title? I mean, do you agree with the argument that some people make that was the day or the time that the X Division Championship lost its credibility? I disagree because I feel like it still went on and had great times after this, and I don't think he was that big of a disgrace to it. But Larkin, how do you feel about that?
Nah, I was fine with it. Like, I've been watching that dude wrestle. He's very talented. His brother's doing his thing now in the WWE. He was fine. You know what I'm saying? I was okay with it. I get it because, the foreigner, we've seen a lot with heels like the Iron Sheik back in the day. I thought, like Hurls, it was poor taste with that intro. But other than that, I thought he was fine. I remember his matches with Shane Sewell, a.k.a. Glamour Boy Shane from Puerto Rico. So, hey, he was fine with me.
Yeah, I don't think it really lost value. It's just he wasn't very good. But, you had guys that won the X Division title before that I didn't think were that, all that cracked up to be. Didn't Michael Shane have the X Division title at one point?
Yes, he
Maybe
did.
He didn't.
Yes, he did.
I thought Michael Shane was pretty bland.
Wasn't he Shawn Michaels' nephew?
He was his cousin.
And he rode that. That was basically his whole gimmick.
Yeah, he was lame.
Yeah, he used to do the the Sweet Shane music or something like that?
He used to do the Bentley bounce.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Matt Bentley.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was bad.
He started off as Michael Shane, then he went to Matt Bentley.
Yeah, I remember that.
Blah. But Sheikh Abdul Bashir, he's an all right wrestler, but that's where it ends. He's just there, So it's not gonna annoy me too much. That's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I think wrestling fans, especially with this company, they overjudge a lot, especially with the internet wrestling community and all. And I feel like it's just such a stupid reach. It could have been a lot worse. Was he the greatest? No, but I remember at the time never fucking thinking this killed the credibility of the X Division title. No, it didn't. What did that eventually was like Bischoff and then John Gabir completely killed it off, et cetera, et cetera. But so we have been a Bound for Glory, who at the time Bound for Glory was still the biggest pay-per-view of TNA's year. So we had Taylor Wilde defeating Awesome Kong and Roxy in a three-way match. You had Beer Money defeating Team 3D, LAX, and the new team of Abyss and Matt Morgan in a Monsters Ball with motherfucking Steve Mongo McMichael for some goddamn reason involved. God.
Go ahead.
You have Booker T defeating AJ Styles and Christian Cage in a three-way match. Now, if I remember right, was this for the Legends title, or did Booker T unveil it afterwards?
I think he unveiled it afterwards. Hurls, you can correct me on that.
Yeah, I believe it was afterwards.
Yeah, I think so too. You have Jeff Jarrett defeating Kurt Angle with the debuting Mick Foley, or not necessarily debuting, but Mick Foley making his TNA pay-per-view debut as the special enforcer. Was this question real fast, guys? Was this was Karen and Jeff Jarrett together? Has this been acknowledged on TV at this point when Jarrett came back?
I don't believe so yet. Hurls, you can. I think it didn't start until 09.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's what I was thinking too, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And then we had the main event. We had Sting defeating Samoa Joe to win the championship. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to interject. Yes, it was definitely 09 because that's what led to Dixie calling Hulk Hogan.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It's on Vince Russo's pod.
Gotcha. Yep. So, I mean, a couple of things to discuss here at the end of Bound for Glory. The first one, this is where the TNA Frontline storyline launched, which I believe it was kind of like the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood in WCW, where they kind of had the younger TNA guys feuding against kind of like the older guys in TNA, the veterans, which eventually spun off into the Main Event Mafia. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you guys think of it? I mean, obviously, the storyline in WCW that Russo did with, the Millionaires Club and the New Blood and all that, it kind of flops. There's a lot of shit going on in WCW at the time that, who knows how it could have went. What do you think of it, Hurls? I know you're a Russo guy. What do you think of this Frontline versus Main Event Mafia? I mean, the Main Event Mafia ended up being great. You know what I mean? But what do you think of this?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. It was a way to do the storyline right. Because, I mean, if you remember, the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood had a lot of potential when it first started, and then it just fizzled. I think because of the oil-water mix that was Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, they just did not see eye to eye. I think the Frontline versus Main Event Mafia feud was a way to kind of correct that, and I thought it was done to perfection. I thought so. And this Bound for Glory, by the way, was one of my favorite Bound for Glories. Actually, I loved that main event with Sting and Samoa Joe, where Samoa Joe just jumps off one of the rows in the by the fans, and then just what's he do, like a back splash onto Sting?
Yeah, he did like a running kick on him, and I think
that was awesome.
Well, dude, this was also the same pay-per-view where Abyss went through the flaming table.
Yes, exactly. And, Mongo's only there because he played with the Bears and it was in Chicago. That's the only connection, and he used to be a former, wrestler or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I really enjoyed this. It was in Chicago. There was a really good crowd for this. The fans were really pumped up. So I don't know. This is one of the Bound for Glories that I remember a lot, and I enjoyed it.
Actually, thanks for clarifying about the whole Chicago thing, Hurls. I didn't catch that or remember that at all. This Bound for Glory stood out to me a lot. Not Hurls, but Larkin. Anything on the front line Main Event Mafia thing?
Yeah, it was fine. We just saw it progress in the upcoming months, man. I mean, it was like you mentioned, it's the Millionaires Club and the New Blood. I mean, it was okay. I mean, I was for it. I liked everyone involved, and it just I think had a lot of potential.
It did, and the WCW stuff, the Bischoff, Russo, Millionaires Club, all that. That's something that we'll discuss on the HeelCast at a later time. But yeah, I agree. It probably was trying to make up for it, and they did a lot better with it. I would know that I would use the word perfection, but it definitely was a lot better than what it portrayed out in WCW. The Main Event Mafia, one of the most iconic factions in the history of TNA, in my opinion, too. They kind of had more longevity. This is pretty damn good stuff at times. The other question, we mentioned the Legends title that got debuted, and there's one more discussion question after this with Bound for Glory, but Legends title, obviously we know this thing kind of failed, and good God, the history of that belt just is an embarrassment. But at the time when it came out, when Booker T debuted it, it was, from what I understand, it was a way to just give Booker T a title in TNA, but, it was fucking good to see TNA give a mid-card title, but at the same time, it was like, how can this be a mid-card title? Can you only be considered a legend to change? There was just a lot of flaws with it, and I just felt like this was doomed for failure, and obviously it was. Larkin or Hurls, I don't care what you want to talk first. Do either of you have any thoughts on the Legends title? What did you think when it debuted?
Well, Booker T nailed it. Then AJ Styles came in and did his thing with it, and then Kevin Nash and Mick Foley and all these people that had it. Then it became the Grand Championship, and this championship King of the Mountain Championship. It was fine. It was just a way to get Booker T's heel character over, and then it kind of just spiraled after that. So go ahead, Hurls.
Yeah, I think we all wanted a mid-card title. I thought the belt looked pretty cool. I thought literally, because there was so many WCW, WWF legends and TNA around this time, I thought it was just going to be a way for them to, keep passing that buck, kind of just, get some of those guys a title. But I liked it. Once I kind of knew it was a mid-card title, I enjoyed it, and I wish they would actually bring it back under maybe like the TV title, just call it the TV title. I'd enjoy that. I think they do need one more title.
I actually agree with you there, Hurls. I'd love to see a mid-card title. The thing that'll always dump me for life is how the fuck this company has never been able to actually do a mid-card title. Just everything they've done with it has been such a disastrous abomination. It just blows my mind. Because it doesn't really seem like it'd be that hard to figure out, but apparently, regardless of who management is in charge of, they can't seem to figure this shit out. But the other thing, we mentioned Mick Foley, the hardcore legend, one of the biggest names in the history of pro wrestling. A lot of people don't know or maybe forget, like, back in these days, TNA had the wildest, and I mean by far, the wildest, most crazy, awesome crowds and fan base in all of pro wrestling. That shit is not a thing anymore, but they used to get a lot of talent, a lot of legends and stuff like that. Obviously we mentioned Sting, Kurt Angle, Nash, the list goes on and on. But we got Mick Foley. He left the WWE because he was doing commentary over there. Didn't like Vince McMahon yelling in his ear, cussing him out, telling him what to say. Shit, we even had Mick Foley write a book about TNA wrestling. I thought this was going to be huge. At the time it was, obviously Impact didn't flop the way that it did at the time Foley came in. But, Hurls, what were your thoughts with Mick Foley coming into TNA?
I thought it was actually pretty cool. I mean, if I remember correctly, he debuted at a house show, or he showed up at a house show.
Yeah, I was there. That. It was at the Long Island show at Westbury.
Yeah. I do. Okay, so that was it. I was excited for him. I didn't know that he was going to become a wrestler. I thought he was just going to kind of do GM, commissioner type stuff. So I was actually pleasantly surprised once he decided to, put the boots back on. I thought he actually did a pretty good job. And we'll get into that, obviously with some of the...
Next year.
Yeah, next year. But, I had no problem with it. He's a huge name, cuts a good promo, and... yeah, I thought it was a good acquisition.
My thoughts really exactly, because he was so tired of just being on commentary, Vince McMahon yelling in his ear like you mentioned, Raven. I think he just wanted to get out of that hole, and he decided, hey, I'm going to leave, going to try this new venture. He went to TNA, saw him like we mentioned at the Westbury House Show, then he debuts, he's an authority figure, then he gets into the ring, and then many months later, not even at the start of the new year, he's the champ, and when we get to April, which we'll talk about in 2009, but yeah, I thought he was fine.
I don't think it was a good acquisition. I thought it was a fucking great acquisition at the time. We're talking one of the biggest names in the entire business, the history of it, especially, over the, 10 years prior to that or so. So it was big, and, he fully attracts a lot of viewers. TNA was really picking up at the time, and it was a damn good thing to see, and I wish it could have lasted longer than it did and had a little bit more, benefits for both. So we moved to November, which is Turning Point. We had Beer Money retaining against the Motor City Machine Guns. It were kind of the start of one of the fucking greatest tag team rivalries in the history of this company. Beer Money and Motor City Machine Guns tore it down and everything. You had Booker T defending that Legends title against Christian Cage, with the stipulation being that if Christian loses the match, he joins the Main Event Mafia. So Christian loses and has to join the Main Event Mafia. You had Kurt Angle defeating Abyss in the Falls Count Anywhere match. I remember the Kurt Angle stint where he runs off of the balcony and does the flip in the air or whatever and lands on Abyss. You had Big Sexy Kevin Nash defeating Samoa Joe. Sting retaining against AJ Styles. Afterwards, we had Christian inducted in the Main Event Mafia. However, instead they turned on him and assaulted him. This led to Rhino, who had been, Christian's enemy at one point, but then his former tag team partner becoming involved in the overall storyline and actually comes over, which never made sense to me. He actually takes over and is the leader of the front line for a little bit after he gets attacked by the Main Event Mafia November 20th of 2008. And this is actually that turn ends up being the end of Christian Cage, which we'll discuss. Obviously, I got stuff to say, but Larkin, anything on Turning Point prior to that before we talk about the career of Christian in TNA?
Just, again, another solid show, and I liked just what I saw. The only thing I'm going to mention about Christian, which I know you guys, I remember watching that, and then he leaves, and then he's on the new ECW. He takes on Jack Swagger, wins that championship, has a couple matches with Dreamer and Swagger. He actually had a great match with Zack Ryder on edition of ECW for that championship. He took on the guys like Lance Hoyt, Shelton Benjamin, so many when he was that champion. So, when I saw him go back with the ECW thing, I was kind of like, all right, you put him on the new ECW, but he helped out a lot of young talents there. And but yeah, Christian Cage and Impact, man, when he came in 2005, going into where we are here, good stuff.
Yeah, like, okay, so turning point in general, the Beer Money Motor City Machine Guns feud, you're exactly right. Like, there's so many good tag team feuds in TNA's history. This is right up there with them. It's just amazing. As far as Christian leaving, I was really not happy about it. Obviously, I was kind of shocked that he left because I thought he was really enjoying his, TNA run. And I remember when he signed that 3-year deal, and I remember they tried to get him to re-sign, and he was pretty much set on going back to WWE. I think he just kind of had something to prove, I guess, in WWE. It really sucked because I thought he was a hell of a talent. I thought there could have been a lot more they did. But, that was his decision. So, he had a good run, though. He had a hell of a 3-year run in TNA.
Yeah, Raven.
Oh. Sorry, guys. I thought I was off of mute. Like I said on the prior shows, in WWE at the time, John Cena was the WWE champ, Batista had become the world champ. But then Christian really started emerging, and as much as shit as I give WWE, I would have done the same thing. Christian, he evolved into this guy that was like just taken it by storm. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, Christian comes along. It's like, this guy's a main eventer. This guy is so good. He just stepped out of Edge of Shadow. Christian became my favorite wrestler at the time. And WWE, they just didn't want to give him that main event status. They didn't want to use him right. So he leaves and he comes to TNA. And I remember his debut saying, I came here because I love professional wrestling. That's why I'm here. And, against all odds, when he wins that belt from Jarrett is possibly, the moment that will always stand out for me, number one in the history of this company. Christian is my favorite wrestler in the history of TNA. I think they called him the instant classic there, and that stuck for a reason. Like, almost every feud, every angle, all these matches he did were legitimately fucking classics. I was super disappointed to see him go because I was worried that WWE wasn't going to use him right, but I also felt like he did enough and proved enough in TNA to where they were going to push and use this guy right and stop dicking him around. I don't think that was the case. I feel like he deserved better over there. I always wanted him to come back, other than that stupid Slammiversary, little excerpt that he got. I think the guy did wonders for the company, and it's a damn shame that they lost him, and I wished it would have never been the case. But I was thankful for the memories, and I just think, like, what an amazing run, and it sucks that it came to an end. But, yeah, you were right, Larkin. It did seem like he was determined to get back there and prove something, and I don't think he got the chance to prove it.
Yeah, because, I mean, honestly, like, I don't think TNA really did anything wrong. I mean, I don't know why. A part of me was hoping that he would just kind of keep seeing this thing, rise and get more popular. But I don't know. I just think he used – I don't want to say used. That's not the right word. But he went to TNA to prove a point. He proved it. And then WWE wanted him back. That's kind of how I looked at it. And he chose WWE. It's too bad, but is what it is.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people, they look at him and be like, oh, well, Christian at WWE made Carter at best. Comes over now, he's the TNA champion. That's not the case. A lot of the times it could be, and I'm not going to dispute that, but this guy was a fucking main eventer, and he was proving it in WWE before he left, and he came over here and showed why he was a main eventer and even that much more. And I feel like anyone that ever tried to knock that, it's just barking up the wrong fucking tree. But, Larkin, was there anything else you wanted to add before we head on to the second final resolution of the year?
Nah, man, just Christian Cage, hell of a time in TNA at the time period, and just hell of a show.
No doubt. So final resolution, the second final resolution, where it becomes a December thing like it kind of belonged. We had Feaster fired. We had Curryman, a.k.a. Christopher Daniels, getting the pink slip, is then fired. You had Super Mex Hernandez get the TNA World Heavyweight title shot. Homicide getting the X Division title shot. And Jay Lethal getting the tag team title shot out of this. I can't remember. Did Daniels leave the company after this, guys?
Yeah.
No.
No, guy. I'm sorry. You first.
No. He didn't leave at this point.
I remember now.
He left when Bischoff and Hogan came in.
Yeah. Wasn't it where, like, he had a thing where Or no, Shane Douglas tried to get his job back, but Daniels did something to come back, didn't he?
Yeah, the Shane Douglas match brings back so much bad memories. Good Lord. Fucking franchise.
It does. And that sucks for me because I love Shane Douglas. I was such a huge fan, but I mean, man, in 2009, I actually just watched the pay-per-view with Douglas and Daniels not too long ago. It was just, goddamn, that was bad.
I was about to say, yeah, because I remember the pink slip, but then once you mentioned Shane Douglas, I'm like, yeah, out of shape Shane Douglas against that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. And let's not forget here, this led, Hernandez winning was fine. I thought Hernandez was a hell of a talent, and he was, kind of on his way to being built up. He had the worst cash-in known to man. He cashed in during a fatal four-way match. Made no sense right there. That was a terrible move on TNA's part. And Dixie was a huge Hernandez fan. She wanted to push Hernandez. So I can't believe they dropped the ball like that.
No, it's I'm going to talk about the Hernandez thing here at the end, but actually I'm glad that Hurls is maybe the only other person alive that will actually give Hernandez his props with me. We also had Eric Young. He was back to being Eric Young, right? Not Super Eric.
Yeah, just point. Eric Young. Yeah.
Yeah, he wins the X Division title from Sheikh Abdul Bashir. This one I look at and I still can't even believe it. We had Christy Hemme defeating Awesome Kong via disqualification, but yet still I literally just said the words Christy Hemme defeating Awesome Kong. Beer Money defeating Matt Morgan and Abyss. We had Angle defeating Rhino with Mick Foley as the enforcer again. And then we had the main event Mafia, which was the team of Sting, Kevin Nash, Booker T, and Scott Steiner, defeating the front line of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and Team 3D. Kind of lackluster to end the year, in my opinion. The one thing that I liked about TNA is, you could tell which were the B pay-per-views and which one were the A pay-per-views at times, I always felt Final Destination should have been a bigger one, you know what I mean? Because you put the name to it, it's the end of the year, why not start it fresh that way? Before we discuss, we kind of talked Curryman, and then I'm going to talk about Hernandez here in a minute. But prior to that, Hurls, any thoughts or things you want to say about Final Resolution? I almost called it Final Destination. Some terrible Devin Sawa movie.
Yeah, not really. I just think that Eric Young winning the X Division title was pretty cool, obviously. But, with a lot of the those cash-ins leading to, I guess, you got Lethal Consequences out of that, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that was good, but Hernandez was so bad. I can't remember if Homicide won the X Division title off that. He may have. I think he may have. But, it was decent pay-per-view, but nothing to really, I'd say a little below average even. So, I don't know. The Hernandez thing really kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, I guess.
Same sentiments with Hurls, I think, for me, because, I've said it, I enjoyed these shows as we're recapping this year, but yeah, as we get towards the end, it's kind of like meh. It's kind of a lackluster way, like you mentioned, to end the year.
Yeah, so here's my thing, man. Hernandez, I've heard so many people talk about how awful this guy is, how about he sucks, this, that. So he's apparently a little bit careless in the ring is the thing. I'm not going to say he is or isn't because let's be honest, I've never stood in a wrestling ring. I couldn't do it, whatnot. But that's been the main knock on Hernandez. Hernandez at this time, in my opinion, and I mean this and I don't care who gets mad at me, this dude was a fucking star in the making. At the time for some reason, I know he's only 6'2" or 6'3" or some shit, but for some reason to me, he always looked like he was 6'8". Jacked as fuck. This dude was muscular as it fucking gets. This guy had, on a look of 1 to 10, he had a 9 or a 10. This guy was a star. And one thing that I always say about Hernandez, for a guy his muscle, built the way that he was and his size, he could do some offensive moves that you don't see guys his size be able to do, except for, let's say, a Brian Cage. He was a star, man, and you talked about, attracting the Latin audience, like Alberto or Rey Mysterio or Eddie Guerrero. This was a way for them to do that, and I do feel that they massively dropped the ball. Hurls is right. They had him cash in and made him look like a fucking idiot. But I feel like Supermax was a star in the making. And the IWC might get mad and say you can't wrestle or whatever, but they're not the ones attracting casual viewers. Vanilla midgets aren't everything. And it was a huge ball drop, in my opinion. This guy could have been a world champion, in my opinion. Sorry to anyone who gets upset with that. I know that IWC that might listen wants to fucking tell me I'm an idiot, and fine, so be it. But I'm glad Hurls actually saw the potential there, too. Larkin, I mean, it's okay if you say he sucks. Did you have any thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I love the Cracker Jack, and I love the Border Toss. One of my favorite power bombs, that crucifix bomb, just a toss. When he took over, because I remember in LAX, it was originally Homicide. There was Machete in there. Apollo was in there with Conan. And then once they brought in Hernandez, I thought he was the perfect fit. And then when he went to solo, I mean, like you mentioned, they did drop the ball, but I think having him in the mix against guys like Sting and Kurt Angle and all these guys, and then they just put him back to tag team with, LAX and Mexican America with Anarquia, and then, what we had just now with the OGs. But yeah, they kind of missed the boat on old Hernandez Supermax.
All right. So look, 2009 is going to be a long show, so I'm just going to have this discussion here, and this is how we're going to close it out. Booker T in TNA. So this was supposed to be a huge thing, and it wasn't. Booker T, a legend, 5-time WCW champion, came over, was a either 1 or 2-time world heavyweight champion in WWE, had the fallout with Triple H, came over to TNA. Now, we get this legend, but let's be honest, not only did he kind of pack it in and not seem to be there, he's went on record and said TNA was kind of like a paid vacation, didn't give his all, and really, I think, really fucked the company over and a lot of younger guys and took time away from them, but also didn't do his best to put people over. I've lost so much respect for Booker. I was always a huge Booker T fan. I lost so much respect for the guy to the point that after all he said about TNA, I can't even stand the guy anymore. I almost cringe thinking about it and seeing him out there anymore. Larkin, in a thriving company like TNA in 2008, I know it's not your top promotion or anything at this day and age at all. Just Booker T overall in TNA, what were your thoughts on it?
All right, well, as someone who's been watching the company since 2004, I will say this. When Booker T came in, dude, I was there his last match where he fought Triple H and Triple H's comeback match at SummerSlam 2007, talking about East Rutherford, New Jersey. That match sucked. I'm not going to lie, that match sucked a dick. And then when he comes to TNA, he's Sting's tag team partner, the mystery partner. He has the feud with Bobby Roode. He's teaming with Scott Steiner. They're the tag champs. We're talking about the main event Mafia. I mean... You know what it is, too? Then they gave him, the African accent, kind of like when he was King Booker, but he's talking all African now, and, something out of Coming to America. It was frustrating to see, and then, you hear the stories about, he didn't want to put Matt Morgan over because it was stupid, how, we said it on his morning show because it was stupid the way that they planned it out. He didn't like the fact that, they wanted me to drive to this appearance, they wanted me to pick him up, because I get it, he wants the treatment because they didn't do it where he was in WWE, and just, he's been on record about what he said about it, but as far as his TNA run, I thought, the beginning it was okay, here comes Booker T. Towards the end, it was kind of lackluster, so... That's really all I can say about Booker T and TNA.
I thought I was pretty pumped up for him to come over to TNA because, he was a WCW legend. I was a huge WCW fan. And I remember when Sting announced him as the mystery guest. But I don't want to say it was, all bad with him. I just thought the way he left the company was bad. I believe his last match was at Bound for Glory 09.
Yes.
Or it was one of those. It was close to there. It was right around there. But, yeah, the way he left, it's just – you could tell he was he was mailing it in and he was making a mockery. And I didn't like that aspect. But unlike me, I actually laughed at his African gimmick. Much like I laughed at his King Booker gimmick. So, yes. I actually didn't mind that stuff, and I thought it was pretty funny. I wanted his run to be a little longer, obviously, but it is what it is. He was kind of winding down at that point anyway. So,
well, and like you said, Hurls, he blatantly was phoning in. And then we saw what would happen about a year and a half later. Him and Kevin Nash are surprise entrance in the Rumble. He comes back in 2011. Kevin Nash is Diesel. So, then you saw Kevin leave in 2010. And then, it was okay. It really was, like I said. But after years, I know a lot of people are not happy with what he said about it in his radio show. That's really, I don't think it was just the fact that he phoned it in, but just everything that's come out now has really kind of left a lot of fans with a bad taste in their mouth.
Well, yeah, and then I believe this week he just said, "Who is Pentagon Junior in Phoenix?" He didn't know who they were, I guess.
Oh boy.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so he's not doing himself any favors.
Jeez. Well, I think if I remember correctly, and I'm sorry for flip flopping around, but wasn't him and RVD like the young? Okay, I think that was that around the time. I think it might have been like a year after or two. Hurls, was that with him and RVD? Apparently, had that running with the Bucks.
Yeah, they had a couple of them. They had Booker T had a run in with them in TNA. Obviously, he thought they were very disrespectful. And then the Young Bucks, I guess, had a WWE tryout, and the reason why they didn't get signed, I guess, was because of Booker T and maybe even Rob Van Dam. I don't know. They said they were pretty disrespectful or something. It might have just been Booker T. I'm not sure, but I thought Rob Van Dam was somewhere included in that as well. So
okay. Go ahead, Raven.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, I forgot about the Matt Morgan thing. I remember that now. The whole car ride stuff. I also liked him as King Booker. I thought that he did good. I really thought like he was the best heel on SmackDown at that time and should be the champ and should have been the main guy at that point. What bothers me so much is the way that he left WWE felt like they were screwed over. And you remember WrestleMania 19. They basically had like Triple H be a racist and and turn him down. And Booker T had never been hotter in WWE. And really, WrestleMania 19, he should have went over and won that. I've heard things like Booker said he shouldn't have got it, but you look at that where it's like Triple H is blatantly racist, and the good guy is supposed to prevail in the end, and he doesn't. You know what I mean? And he goes, and then he gets screwed over by Triple H again, and he leaves the company. You would think that when you go to someplace that gives you that chance to go out there and be yourself and redo it. And pay you and stick it to the WWE, that you would have been more serious, treated them better, worked harder, and just really it's a slap in the face. And I just when you look at it that way, like what the fuck is wrong with you? But you don't screw over the company that you feel screwed you. You go back and kiss their ass and work your ass off for them. But this company that's paying you is not fucking you over. Is actually really kind of handing you the goddamn world. You treat like shit, and that it bothers me. And I remember. It was when we did the HeelCast a lot more frequently, and we had a bigger audience and all. But I remember Booker T started doing a podcast with some guy, and he had said more comments. I mean, this was years after the original comments came out, where he was really shitting on TNA and talking about how bad they were. And I had said a comment on Twitter, about how, I just called him out and just said, this is fucked up and bullshit. I can't remember at the time, but I remember the podcast co-host that he works with get all offensive and said, that's not what Booker said. Booker was never disrespectful to TNA or Impact. And if you actually listen, and I was like, dude, I'm literally reading it word for word what he said. You can't twist it around. What he said is what he said, and he's literally shitting on it. I actually challenged this guy. I was like, come on our podcast then and prove to us, you or Booker or whatever. I knew Booker T wasn't going to come. And I said, why don't you come on our show and tell us differently and tell us how he treated Impact good and tell me how his words are taken out of context. Guy wouldn't do it. So I've had this bad taste of Booker T in my mouth, and that sounded really gay. But the thing too is, I mean, like if you look at TNA in 2008, like the roster was young and working so hard. The company was growing and working so hard. And you have this legend, this guy that should come in and really be this huge boost in this veteran presence. And he fucked him over, man. I'm not a fan of him anymore. And it sucks as I always was. But I mean, I guess that's the end of what I have to say about the Booker T run. I did think his accent was funny at times. Some of the stuff he did, he was scared of AJ Styles. When they said his actual real name on TV, was it like Robert? What's his last name again?
Huffman.
Yeah, that's right. And Steiner kind of laughed at it. It had its moments, but he phoned it in. It was obvious, and fuck you, Booker T. But that wraps up 2008. We are going to do 2009, hopefully sometime soon. Then we're going to get into the Hogan era. We're going to cover WWF, WCW, ECW. There's a lot of fun stuff coming up. Hope you enjoy this. I want to thank my co-host on this dais, the Hurls man himself, the king of Fap Style, and my man Larkin with the S&M show. So thank you guys very much. Check out TNA 2009 soon. Check out the HeelCast.